I was really excited when she was gonna do Call Her Daddy, the sex podcast, because finally I would be able to write the real story about how Kamala Harris became a force in American politics without being called a sexist and a loon. I mean, there was not a one Willie Brown spoken during the Call Her Daddy podcast, and that's what I thought it was gonna be about. Oh my gosh, the open mistress of Willie Brown gets appointed to all these different jobs where she gets $400,000 over the course of 4 years. Finally, we can have an honest conversation about feminist Kamala Harris making her way to the top, Sean. No, of course that didn't happen. This is the media strategy that Kamala Harris has right now, playing catch up for Donald Trump.
All right, guys, thanks for joining us today. Big show last night. Thanks to everybody who joined into the Road to 270. Reminder, we're doing that every Wednesday until we end. I could not believe how many of you tuned in and shared and commented. I love the ideas. Remember, Sunday night, 7 o'clock p.m., set that notification button now, because we are going live in the same way. We're going to address the 7 battleground states, but we're bringing in some of the best guests on the ground in each of the states. A lot of surprises. We got Scott Pressler from Pennsylvania. We got a top guest from Georgia and Arizona, and they're going to go, and we're going to go state by state, but we're going to get their take on early vote registration, all that kind of stuff. So you want to make sure that you are hitting that notification button. Sunday night, 7 o'clock. Don't worry, the Patriots play at 1, so you're totally fine football-wise. I wouldn't worry about it. As we deal with the aftermath of Milton in Florida, by the way, our thoughts and prayers go out to everybody in Florida and Georgia and Alabama and anywhere that's been affected by this. Obviously, a lot of people still picking up from Helene. We'll get into that with the panel on the political consequences, but I hope everybody is safe and staying in touch with loved ones down in the area. It was kind of scary to see some of the damage that went on down there. We'll talk about the political consequences in just a minute. All right, before we get to the panel, though, I want to tell you, a lot of us wake up every morning and need a little jolt of coffee as we go. And one of the cool things is I'm so excited that Wire to Fish has been one of our sponsors. They are a great, great coffee. But the best part is that they're consistent with our values. If you're a coffee drinker, I think you should check out Wire to Coffee. They care a lot about the earth. They want clean water, clean air, like a lot of us. And they put 25% of the profits back into faith-based and clean water initiatives. So you can actually don't feel like you're going to well, I'll name names. You're not going to Starbucks. You're not going out and supporting a company that then is using the profits to go against your values. These guys are great. The coffee is delicious. It's sourced in Guatemala and Mexico for some of the finest beans around the world. Give Wire to Fish a try today. And like I said, the best part is they're giving back to causes that I think you can feel are consistent with your values. Go to Wire to Fish, the number 2, wire2fishcoffee.com, and check out code WeCare for 15% off your first order. All right, we got a lot to break down with the panel today because we got a lot of new poll results out tomorrow. We've got a pollster coming back on the show to analyze where we are. You'll be really surprised what the new polls say and what I said last night on the Road to 270, because you'll notice a lot of similarities. We know what we're talking about is what it really comes down to. Kamala's on this media blitz. I don't think it's going too well. I can't wait to hear what the panel has to say about this. And guess what? CBS caught red-handed in that 60 Minutes interview. I'm going to play you the clip. It's unbelievable what they're doing. I mean, I don't think it's a huge surprise, but it just shows you why Donald Trump was right not to do it. Before I get into it, I told you what I do when I wake up, right? You need a little jolt to get up. Every night, I take Beam's Dream Powder. It is amazing, folks. It's got melatonin, magnesium, reishi, apigen, all those natural ingredients that a lot of us try to take sometimes. But if I take one of the scoops, I put it in some water, 30 seconds in the microwave, and 30 minutes later, when my head hits the pillow, I'm out for the night. I'm not kidding. When you try this, and a lot of people have reached out to me and DM me and said, does this really work? I'm telling you, I've struggled with sleep my whole life, getting to sleep because I get wired, and then staying asleep. This stuff is a game changer if that's your thing, and it tastes amazing. I love the cinnamon powdered one, and I'm telling you, I would drink it all day if it didn't put you to sleep, which it does. Find out why so many athletes and professionals are trying this. Try Beam's best-selling Dream Powder. Get 40% off your first order. Go to shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code SPICER at checkout and save up to 40% off. Shopbeam.com/Spicer. And just thank me later. You will have an amazing night's sleep. Wake up refreshed after this. All right, I want to bring in our panel, former Georgia congressman and the host of the Doug Collins podcast and the AFPI chairman. I believe they're down there in the swing state of Georgia, Doug Collins. Ashley Hayek, the executive director of America First Works, the chief engagement officer of America First Policy Institute, and Bradley Devlin, who is the editor of the Daily Signal, doing great work over there. We had such great response from our last segment with the Daily Caller. Anyway, guys, good to see you all. I want to just start with this. Kamala's on a media blitz, is what the media likes to say. Ashley, she kicked it off with "call her daddy," and then gone on a Howard Stern, Colbert. Technically these are media outlets, but I got a lot of feedback from people who said, I'm not really sure people fully appreciate what "call her daddy" really is and the message that it sends to women. What did you think of that?
Well, I think that when there's a massive hurricane going through North Carolina and FEMA's not showing up for a week, that maybe you should reprioritize going on a program called "Call Her Daddy" versus dealing with what's happening in North Carolina and Georgia. But that's just my personal preference. The reason she went on "Call Her Daddy" is because she's trying to appeal to women. In states like North Carolina and Georgia, there is a significant gender gap. So from a campaign strategy, she went onto the program to try to appeal to women, especially younger women. That podcast has a pretty massive following, and it gave her the opportunity to put out some viral-ish saying that we are already seeing on Instagram and TikTok. One of her sayings was, there's some women who are not aspiring to be humble, or who want to be more ambitious, in other words, basically trying to play on and criticize the president and JD Vance with accusing them in a way of minimizing women's role, not realizing that especially President Trump has surrounded himself with women in key decision-making roles, both in the previous administration as well as on the campaign. But this is just a strategy for her to have her viral moments and try to appeal to so many more younger women, because that is a key demographic for her in her campaign strategy.
Doug, is the strategy working right? I mean, you've run for office. Your team comes to you and says, hey, Congressman, here are the 5 interviews that we have time for today. I assume that they're saying to you, we think this is good because it's going to hit this area, this demographic or whatever. So, she's done 60 Minutes. We'll talk about that in just a second because I want to get to that. But, she's done "Call Her Daddy," Howard Stern, Stephen Colbert. Do you think that, as a strategy, this makes sense?
It's the only strategy I got, Sean. I mean, look, Ashley laid it out very well about "Call Her Daddy" podcast. Look, they're playing to that's the abortion play right there. That's the women's rights, ability, reproductive rights, the women's healthcare issue. That's where they're playing. But notice what they did here. And you mentioned 60 Minutes, but the 60 Minutes is buried among 4 powder puff kind of interviews where nothing was going to be said to her that was terrible, and she still messed it up. I mean, how do you go on The View as a Democrat and get messed up on your own messaging when you were asked, what would you change from Joe Biden? Oh, I wouldn't do anything. And then you go on to Colbert later that evening with your Miller High Life, and you get a chance to pick it up again. And
it was a mulligan. Yeah, that was dude, okay, we're going to give you a second shot at not screwing this up. And she's like, no. Let me screw it up again, right? I mean, Bradley, the thing that's so funny is, from a media strategy, to my question with Doug, I mean, you get presented with these outlets, and the goal is, we think that this will move the needle for us. This will help reach an audience. You look at the aforementioned interviews that we just did, and the biggest clip coming out is her on The View, which is a gimme, with a quote that says, and I'll get to this in a second, but she basically says, hey, I'm not going to do anything different than Joe Biden, and that now has become an ad. The Trump campaign's literally like, thank you.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
From a media strategy standpoint, she was going on layup type media outlets and moved the needle backwards.
Well, first off, I never thought I'd hear Doug say "call her daddy," and I don't think I ever want to hear those words come out of that Georgia mouth ever again. Call Her Daddy, you know, I was really excited when she was going to do Call Her Daddy, the sex podcast, because finally I would be able to write the real story about how Kamala Harris became a force in American politics without being called a sexist and a loon. I mean, there was not a one Willie Brown spoken during the Call Her Daddy podcast, and that's what I thought it was going to be about. Oh my gosh, the open mistress of Willie Brown gets appointed to all these different jobs where she gets $400,000 over the course of 4 years. Finally, we can have an honest conversation about feminist Kamala Harris making her way to the top, Sean. No, of course that didn't happen. This is the media strategy that Kamala Harris has right now, playing catch up for Donald Trump. Donald Trump, over the past 8 years, has revealed the media to be the political apparatus of the Democratic Party in the town square. And because of that, what have we seen? We've seen a decentralization of the media environment. So now what is Donald Trump's media strategy since he can't get a fair shake, whether it's on the debate stage or in an interview? Well, I'm going to go on Andrew Schulz's podcast. I'm going to go talk to Theo Vaughn. You know, maybe I won't do any of your hoity-toity 60-minute interviews. Instead, I'm going to go talk to people who are focused on reaching everyday Americans and having casual conversations, and Trump comes off as likable. Kamala Harris does not. And so her bookers are thinking, we got to get her in those same environments, and she cannot thrive the way that Donald Trump does. So that's what I think is behind this late media blitz by the Kamala Harris campaign.
Oh, it's really quickly, what I think is interesting is that the Call Her Daddy podcast is supposed to focus on women's rights, personal stories, mental health, things of that nature. It's more sexual in nature, to your point. However, they're doing these interviews to micro-target people. And that interview in particular is targeting a demographic that younger women, they actually don't typically vote. So it's interesting how she's using her time to try and appeal and micro-target to voters that actually probably are not going to be inspired to vote for her after listening to that. And the other thing is, this week, you know, her husband, it came out with all these stories about how he was physically abusive. And, you know, when are you going to start adjusting that? How about that for a women's rights point of view?
How crazy is this that you have these massive allegations about Doug Emhoff, about the nanny, the abuse, and then there's another story that came out that says at the law firm, he would basically make, you know, comments about people's young women's appearance, and yet nobody will touch it. Nobody will touch it. In fact, and I get it, like, but the thing that's funny is they want to make this, you know, this, what do they call it? The redefinition of masculinity. And no one will talk about the fact that he's got multiple allegations of sexism, of abuse.
No. But they took Donald Trump to court in New York over an allegation.
Yeah. Hey, the Doug Emhoff stuff has become the Hunter Biden laptop story of this cycle right now. It's the Hunter laptop. They don't want to touch it because they know it's effective. They know that it's true in everything that's come up. Because here's the one thing, Sean, I've not heard a lot of back channel, because you know how this works. If that story comes out, the back channel comes in and says, no, this isn't true. This isn't true. I haven't heard any back channel. They've just sort of left it alone because they don't want to touch it. This is the Hunter Biden laptop story right here.
I think you're right. I mean, the idea, by the way, trust me, you know why? Because Doug, here's what's again, I don't think she's going to win. If anyone saw the road to 270 yesterday, you know what? I don't believe that's going to happen. But God forbid she did. In March of next year, there's going to be like, you know, new evidence from his former law firm Venable that came out that, oh yeah, he did do the following, and it's just too late now. And we didn't, you know, it was Rudy Giuliani and Steve Bannon that suppressed it. I mean, they're going to blame it on somebody on the right. We've talked about 60 Minutes. I want people to see this. It's gone viral. I put it out on all my social media channels, but I want people to understand what I'm about to show you. This is the first thing that you're going to see is 60 Minutes' actual unedited interview. They ask her a question about Israel and how she answers it. And then I'm going to show you right afterwards what they played on 60 Minutes edited. And that's what the American people saw. So let's take a look at this and just see what I'm talking about.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
Bradley, that's not even editing. I mean, that's Hollywood. We're going to script this for you. Bill Whitaker asked great questions. I give him credit for that. But this is unbelievable. They literally are like, no, don't worry. We'll take care of you no matter what you say. The unedited answer is a word salad of nothingness. What she said, I think, was stupid still. But at the end of the day, it sounded a lot more coherent.
Yeah, Sean, I think it's worth giving Bill credit for the questions that he asked. Now, they were very basic questions, and you could see through her facial expressions, even in that clip, how frustrated she's getting. She's leaning in, she's raising her eyebrows. You can see her pursing her lips a little bit. That's all telltale signs that she's ticked off, that this is how 60 Minutes is approaching this interview. As for the editors of this interview, what, did they just fall out of a coconut tree? I mean, thankfully now, more and more voters are digitally native, if you've heard that term before. They know how the media environment operates in a digital space, so they can see cuts. They can see these types of cuts that they're putting into the CNN interview, and that's why, or the 60 Minutes interview, and that's why it's been picked up all over the place, is because we know that Kamala Harris cannot formulate a coherent sentence, and so they have to do all of this jump cutting, and that only deters more voters away from her, in my personal opinion. And even if you look at the edited answer, Sean, there's not a whole lot there. Right. So for her to still be struggling with these answers when we're on the brink of a broader regional war in the Middle East, on the brink of potentially World War III if Russia, who's still fighting Ukraine, gets involved with the Iranians fighting against Israel, like who knows how this can spiral out of control. She had almost a month blackout from the media, and now she's going on this media blitz, and she cannot formulate basic, simple, clear answers for the American people. That's why the American people still don't know a lot about Kamala Harris, is because she can't say anything even when she does get in front of the camera.
Doug, how many times, I mean, if this was a Republican, if you put a campaign ad out like this, they would say that they would accuse you and your campaign of editing, you know, and yet here I mean, this is the media doing it. That's not what she said. They edited it.
Yep.
I mean, I don't, how does no one in the rest of the media call that out and say, this is not an acceptable practice for us?
Yeah, here's the way I would actually call this out. I'm going to take a little different take. I agree with everything that was just said about this interview, and I put it out on social as well. But I'm waiting for the RNC to file a complaint with the FEC about an in-kind contribution, because they offered this interview to both. There's no equal access issue or equal time access issue problem. The problem is Trump decided not to do it. That's fine. They could have done the interview and let everything else go and then just let it out there, let the American people decide. Instead, they edited it, they polished it, they made it into a campaign ad, you could argue, because they made her say something she really did not say. Until mainstream media is held accountable for these type of blatant editing acts, this is going to continue. This is a blatant in-kind contribution. I don't see how they get around it.
You know, actually, the funny thing is, Trump refused in part to do the interview because when he last met with Leslie Stahl, she lied about Hunter Biden's laptop. She said it wasn't true, it wasn't real, and Trump said, I want an apology. They started the interview by saying Trump asked for an interview, claiming that we said it was not, you know, legitimate and that we never did that. That was false. They actually did. The interview's out there. We put that out there as well. They did say that. Leslie Stahl undermined the legitimacy of the accusation that the laptop. And now they do this. They are, as Doug said, a tool of the Democratic Party. I'm glad Trump didn't do it.
Yeah, me too. I don't think he should do any more debates. I don't think that he should lean in. I think what he's doing, reaching directly to the American people, going on the other various podcasts that he's been going to, that is the way to win people over at this point in time. Right now, given how close we are to the election, this is about turnout. And there's really not very many people left to persuade. And we know the truth. We've seen the truth. And the left, the establishment media is trying to basically prop Kamala up so that her base feels she doesn't have to have a big policy idea. She doesn't have to do anything extraordinary. She just has to not be Joe Biden and be able to move forward and be acceptable to their base.
Right.
They have an enthusiasm problem.
Can I piggyback off this for a second? Because I think this is really, really interesting. It is all about turnout. That is the current rules of the election system. That's what it is right now. Like, Doug, where is Stacey Abrams and her voter registration machine? I haven't
October
heard anything
19th.
from.
That's a good question.
I haven't heard anything about the sitting governor of Georgia this election cycle registering a bunch of people.
An article just today came out about it. Seriously, you should say that article just came out today about that. They're in financial trouble and they're way, way, way below their goals for what they've been hitting. Look, that was nothing but a grift. Let's just be frank about that. That was a grift from day one.
Totally. But what Ashley previously said at the top of this segment was that Kamala Harris is doing these things to reach low propensity voters. That's not the problem that Kamala Harris has right now. Kamala Harris needs to shore up the divisions in her own base and get them to the polls. Mm-hmm. Now, with Donald Trump, this alternative media strategy makes more sense. Why? Because the Republican Party, under this realignment that's happened under Trump, is now relying on those low propensity voters to come out to the polls. If you look at the people who are unlikely to vote, I mean, massive advantage for Trump right now. And Trump needs to make sure that those people get there. And how do you reach these people who are apolitical but still side with the former president? Well, you got to reach them through Theo Vaughn. You got to reach them through Andrew Schultz. You got to reach them through, hopefully, maybe Joe Rogan. But I don't think that's a possibility since Trump kind of went after Joe Rogan previously. But I think Ashley makes a great point there, right? Turnout is the game now, and this isn't improving Kamala Harris' prospects with the people that she needs to win Michigan, namely the people who are upset about the Israel policy.
Yeah. All right. Before I have a question I want to ask you guys that I think, but before I do that, let me just pause for 1 second. If you are running a company, if you're the person responsible for the finances for the company, and you are spending a ton of time on expense reports, whatever, you've got to check this out. This is the Ramp card. It looks like a Visa card. You can give it to your employees. It's just like any other credit card or expense card. The cool part is it will save you a ton of time and money in your company. I mentioned this before. We had a guest on the show. They run their company. And they said to me afterwards that they got Ramp. It saved them a ton of time and money because Ramp makes everything a heck of a lot easier. It gives you insight in your company spending. You're able to issue cards and automate expenses, set limits for what people can do. You don't chase receipts anymore. It all comes out in one easy to read report for you. It's therefore saving you a ton of money. It's easy to use. It's easy to get started. You get to issue virtual and physical cards and start making payments in less than 15 minutes, regardless of the size of your company. And you can get $250 right now. Like, you're never going to see this deal in the Biden economy. $250 just by going to ramp.com/Spicer and signing up. Ramp.com/Spicer and signing up. And like I said, it will change the level of efficiency that you currently have in your company. You're not going to be running around changing this, asking employees to issue different receipts and expenses, because it automates everything for you. And you can set the limits on where they can spend, how much they can spend. So go to ramp.com/Spicer. Cards are issued by Sutton and Celtic Bank, members FDIC, terms and conditions apply. All right, guys, here's the question I want to ask you based on what you just said. And I want to keep this brief because I got a bunch of things, but you've sort of sparked a thought. When Kamala Harris loses on November 6th, there's going to be a blame game. They're going to blame, okay, I won't fill in the blank yet. What do you think is going to be the dominant reason that is given for her losing the race? Is it a tactic? Is it a person? Is it timing? Ashley, let's start with you. What are Democrats going to say was the biggest reason she lost?
The election was stolen.
You think they're going there?
Why not? They did it. Hillary Clinton said it. Stacey Abrams said it. They'll say like, no, she's actually the president. The only other thing I would say is they might blame Joe Biden.
Okay. That's what okay. Doug, what do you think is going to be the number one reason that Democrats say they lost?
The same reason for Stacey and everything. I agree with Ashley on the first part, but I think the bigger narrative is going to come up is Biden, and they're going to bring the Bidens. They're going to bring Jill and Joe. And I've got you one.
And when you say, do you think that they're going to blame them and just say they didn't leave quick enough, or that they
didn't help? Yeah,
okay.
I mean, it's come out the last week. I mean, he's scheduling stuff on top of her. He's contradicting her. I mean, I think it's hilarious. But I think one of the biggest October surprises could actually come this month against Harris and possibly be rooted in the Bidens, and we won't find out about it for 5 years.
Okay. Bradley, what do you think?
SCOTUS.
They're going to blame the court.
Really?
I think they're going to blame the court. I think they're going to say that they were not proactive enough and they ruled incorrectly on all of the legal issues that have plagued Donald Trump during this campaign cycle. That Donald Trump, the orange man, the evil orange man, should have been in an orange suit this entire time. He should have been relegated to the dustbin.
So will they blame DOJ or the court? They're going to say the court.
They're going to say the court impeded. They're going to say the court impeded the DOJ in prosecuting Trump, and that Trump should have never been able to run for office. And therefore, we're going to lay the groundwork, because Democrats aren't going to blame another Democrat. Never.
Right.
That's only things that the Republican consulting class tend to do. And so when Kamala Harris loses, if she loses, I think it's going to be the SCOTUS, because then they're going to be able to lay the groundwork for packing the court and ending the filibuster when they do take back power.
Okay, good point.
Sean, real quick, I want to add to that, because I agree with what he said, but I want to add something else. I think let's move beyond the surface level of Democrats. You get to the real operatives in the Democratic Party, I think there's going to be a real discussion, not that maybe that public, but they're going to lay the blame at Harris's feet. The Democratic offers are going to lay it at her feet.
I think you're onto something, Doug, because I think they're going to say she couldn't handle the interviews. Right. She wasn't authentic enough. Biden got I think that Biden, I actually, this is where I think I'm a little different. I think you're right. There's going to be people who say he didn't get out of the race early enough, but I think they're going to say she couldn't close the deal. Right. Biden got out of the way, and then she was inauthentic. She wasn't, I mean, like Hillary got blamed for not going to Wisconsin. Look at where she is today. What's she doing? She's not working hard. This is not the sign of a campaign that's in the final 30 days of a campaign. I don't know where the heck she is today, but she's not doing. I remember in 2016, Trump was like boom, 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 everywhere all the time. She has to close the deal. People don't know who she is. I'd be out there going everywhere every day.
But maybe they don't want people to know who she is.
I know that's the other. I get it, but that gets back to this idea that I agree that she was not a good candidate and she was horrible at closing the deal. I agree with you. Part of the reason she's not out there is because they're like, we don't like what we see. It's the same reason that Biden wasn't out there. It's because he couldn't, right? All right. Let me switch gears a second. Ashley, today is National XX Day. Yeah, I can see how much pride you have in that. So it's interesting. There's an organization that put out an ad today that I just thought was brilliant, asking Nike to do the right thing. Let's see if we can play that ad real quick.
Dear Nike.
Dear Nike.
Dear Nike.
Why won't you stand up for me? Why won't you stand up for me? Why won't you?
Why do you claim to support women and girls?
Yet when we need you most, you remain silent.
Today, males are claiming our identity,
our sports,
our spaces.
Men and boys are stealing opportunities, medals,
trophies,
and our future.
And it's not fair or just.
In fact, it's often dangerous. Yet you refuse to use your platform to stand up.
You say you're for social justice and progress.
So why do you allow men's rights to come before ours?
See, with a big platform
comes an even bigger responsibility.
You have a chance to do the right thing,
not just do the easy thing.
So we're asking you, Nike.
So we're asking you, Nike.
So we're asking you, Nike.
As the biggest voice in all of sports.
Will you stand up for me? Will you stand up for me? Will you stand up for me?
Will you stand up for me? Will you?
Will you?
Will you just do it?
All right, Ashley, I love the ad. I want to ask you, do you think that this issue is playing enough in the cycle among the candidates and the campaigns?
I don't think it can play enough at all. I think it should be escalated even more. There's a reason why the left doesn't want to talk about this issue is because it's a losing issue for them. Number one, they can't define what a woman is. Number two, this administration has done more to hurt women and girls than in any generation. They literally withheld federal funding for low-income schools that refused to lean into preventing boys from participating in girls' sports. And there is not enough that we can say about this issue. And it's not just Nike, it's the school districts, it's this administration, it's Target, it's all of these corporations. For so long, we've been told that girls should have to have the same opportunity, that girls can do it all. And now they're taking everything away and allowing boys who could not be successful pretend to be girls so they could feel like winners. And it's a huge issue. And I just don't think it could be emphasized enough. And every single candidate, whether you're running for school board, state house, Congress, Senate, you should be asking your opponent, where do you stand on this issue? Because you will win every single time if they are not in line on the right side.
Yeah, I love this issue. If this was any other company, it would be getting a lot more media attention. But these guys are so scared of Nike and all the advertising dollars that they have. But I'm glad to share that ad with folks because I'm glad that it's called XX. Let me just XX-XY Athletics is the one that put that out. So congrats to them for putting that out there and highlighting it because. Again, Nike wants to say that they're standing up for women and then they're doing everything they can to screw them over.
Sean, one of the best ads Trump team has run. They've run a lot of good ones here recently, but one of the best ads they're running that actually gets the most play is the "She stands with they, them, I stand with you." And it's it's the ad about the guy in prison.
Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
It's hard to believe, but it's true. Even the liberal media was shocked Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners and illegal aliens.
Every transgender inmate would have access.
Kamala's for they, them. President Trump is for you.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
Nobody can understand that one. I mean, no matter what you may left-wing idea about women and men's sports and all that stuff, you can't come home to say somebody in prison who murdered people ought to have a sex change and we ought to pay for it. There's just no way you can do that.
I think we should make an ad. I think we should make an ad that takes everyone who works in a sweatshop for Nike in China and say, will you do the right thing, Nike? Will you do the right thing? Will you move manufacturing back to the United States? Will you stop putting profits in front of people? I think we should just keep doing this. Just keep hammering these large corporations because, I mean, at the end of the day, if these corporations aren't going to do the right thing, aren't going to watch out for the American people that make their prosperity possible, then they ought to have hell to pay.
But bring this full circle to the very first interview, the very first thing we talked about, Sean, with Call Her Daddy, like talking about, women's rights. Like, this is a women's rights issue. And if Kamala Harris will not address this issue, I mean, that's really what this is about. Totally agree with the big corporations in China and all those ties, but like, this is a campaign that wants to run on women's issues. And when you are allowing this to happen, when you are allowing Lake and Riley's to, be raped and murdered, when you're allowing men to participate in girls' sports, you are not for women, period, full stop.
Yeah. I want to pivot to the storm. As I said at the beginning, I hope everybody is getting the help and the support that they need in the aftermath of both Helene and Milton. There was something on the news this morning. Governor DeSantis, first of all, I could spend the rest of the show just talking about Governor DeSantis because that guy's been an animal down there. Really good response. But there was a great comment, Doug, in response to a reporter's question that I want to play for you because this is a perfect example of how Washington responds in a second. But let me play the clip and show you what he was asked and how he responded.
Some Wall Street analysts predicted that Milton's losses could exceed $50 billion. Does the state have any sort of...
How the hell would a Wall Street analyst be able to know? It's been dark all day. What, you just going to know that you're going to do? I mean, give me a break on some of this stuff. They're doing damage assessments now. They always say this or that or whatever. I mean, what I would say is...
All right. But Doug, I mean, that's the thing that I love. And that's a very Washington... I'm glad he answered the way it is. We woke up this morning. People are devastated by what happened in the aftermath of the storm. Some people don't have electricity and water. And there's already people saying it's $50 billion, right? And someone in Washington is going to write a check. As opposed to what DeSantis is saying is, hey, it was dark. How the hell do you know what happened when you woke up this morning? It sounds like a very Washington answer. Let's just write a big check instead of actually understanding what's wrong. This is how we dealt with COVID. This is how, this is the problem fundamentally in so many ways, which is 50 million, 100 million, pick a number.
Yeah, the answer was perfect. He's been pitch perfect basically on a lot of the stuff down there, especially dealing with Harris and the calls from Harris. And by the way, speaking of, since I've been injecting ethics and legal issues here all morning, how in the world can the phone call that was so rigged and so taped and so staged with the St. Petersburg mayor and Harris on government dime, by the way, that was a government plane, that was government time, and they're basically putting out there as a political ad, you can't do that. That's a no-no. But they're letting them do it. Ron goes right to the point. He says, look, quit doing this kind of stuff. He said, we got to help people and we got to do it now. And I think that's been the whole process. And for those of us, I mean, I've got a family member who right now was in the storm last night in Daytona Beach Shores. I mean, I'm in Georgia. I'm just south of the devastation in North Carolina. I've got folks all in this. We've got to get the materialistic stuff to where they need to be. We got to get people with water. We got to get them with power. We got to get them back to starting back on their life again. And these are just simply distraction. Washington just simply wants to write a check. And here's the problem, Sean, and you know this as well as anybody. When they bring that disaster relief bill, when they get back in November, it's amazing how all of a sudden something from California is going to pop up in it, and something from Alaska is going to pop up in it. And it's not. And this is what they do. It's a big sandwich full of crap, and they say eat it, and they don't understand when you say no. I want to do what's actually best, but we're going to have all this other stuff in there as well.
Yeah, Bradley, it's amazing to me how the response to this is going. Like Kamala, to Doug's point, suddenly is injecting herself. And DeSantis's point was, well, let me play it for you. This is Governor DeSantis when asked why he's not playing ball with Kamala Harris. Take a listen.
Accusations that this had all become politicized. Can you just speak to what happened there?
I am working with the President of the United States. I'm working with the Director of FEMA. I'm marshaling all my state assets. We've been doing this now nonstop for over 2 weeks between Helene and this. And so if there's anything I can leverage to benefit my people, I'm going to do it. The fact of the matter is they put out a story saying I didn't even know she was trying to reach me, but she has no role in this process. And I've been dealing with these storms in Florida under both Trump and Biden. Neither of them ever politicized it. And in fact, all the storms I've dealt with under this administration, although I've worked well with the president, she has never called in Florida. She has never offered any support. So what she's doing is she's trying to inject herself into this because of her political campaign.
So Bradley, suddenly it's like, wait, DeSantis, they've been in office 3 years. A ton of storms have come through Florida. She's been AWOL because the vice president, let's face it, isn't really a big role in storm aftermath. And suddenly it's like, I need to call Ron DeSantis because, well, it's political.
Yeah, a lot there. First thing I want to say is these two hurricanes need to be Kamala's Katrina. If the right-wing media has any competence left in it before this election cycle, it needs to be focused on making these storms connected to the incompetence of this administration and the administration's incompetence that would continue under Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris was on a West Coast campaign tour when Hurricane Helene hit, and then all of a sudden she realized that she looked like George W. Bush going to San Diego to speak at a VJ Day memorial instead of going back to Washington and heading the federal response. So now the Kamala Harris campaign apparatus is playing catch up with this whole thing. You saw the image of her in the plane talking to the FEMA director when Helene hit. That was very similar, in my opinion, to George W. Bush looking out the window, surveying the damage of Katrina from Air Force One. And then you have her saying that she's deeply, deeply involved in all this stuff. You're right, Sean. Typically, the vice president isn't as involved in this stuff, but she comes on the heel of one Mike Pence, who actually took a very proactive role in preparing FEMA and having the nation prepared for these types of natural disasters. And Mike Pence has been actually on the front foot for all the disagreements that exist between him and the former president in saying that Kamala Harris did a poor job of not making herself and the administration prepared because she didn't host any sort of preparation meetings with FEMA. And so I think that's what is behind all of this is Kamala Harris needs to inject herself politically into this process or risk massive, it could have massive election implications if she doesn't at least seem interested in fixing the problems that are currently, wreaking havoc in Appalachia and in Florida and in Georgia and across the country.
Can I?
Ashley, yeah, go ahead. Ashley,
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say what you guys do. You've been heavily involved in a lot of this stuff. And again, I apologize because I know legally one part of America First, and I think it's America First Works, is heavily. Well, no, there's all you guys, all the lawyers status. Are always right.
No, actually, I never talk about that.
No, but I want to talk about the politics of the storm. I don't mean to be crass, but I want to how is this affecting you think about Florida, which, is a 4 or 5 point lead, but then North Carolina, and I'll get to Doug and talk to me about Georgia, but actually, how is this affecting your organization's ability to do what it needs to do?
Okay, so there's a couple of things. The first thing I want to just touch on really quickly is the difference between Governor Cooper of North Carolina and Governor DeSantis in Florida. And just the responses in general are just so vastly different. You have in North Carolina that's like what do I do? And then Florida with Governor DeSantis, he's got it under control. He's got linemen showing up. He's got, everything ready, the National Guard standing behind him. And you don't see that with Roy Cooper. And that's the importance of state politics that I think often gets overlooked. And this is why governor races are really, really important. The second piece of this is elections. When we had the hurricane, I think it was 10 years ago or so in Florida, there was concerns about one of the bridges that collapsed. They said it could take, 2 years or whatever, and they were able to repair the bridge in about 2 weeks. I mean, it's the response rate that you're able to have when you have a conservative, responsive government. In North Carolina, there's a lot of concern about how you're going to be able to replace infrastructure in a timely manner. And that's the number one concern. The areas that are affected in North Carolina the most. Originally, they thought there were about 25 counties. Now it looks like it's about 13 counties that are greatly affected. And a lot of those counties is a 2-to-1 Trump margin. And so there's a couple things that are happening. Number one, on the absentee ballots. So most of our people are election day voters. They're not absentee mail voters. However, if you are concerned about your vote being counted, you can spoil your ballot and go in and recast your ballot. There was a resolution that was passed by the State Board of Elections that had about 7 different measures in terms of what would be done in those affected counties alone. Now it's going to be a matter of how do we let those voters in those counties know what the regulations are and what they need to do. There are parts of those communities that still don't have communication, so it can't be a typical voter contact text message. It can't be digital ads. Like, we're going to have to be a little bit gritty and a little bit more creative. It's going to be showing up at the dollar store, handing out water bottles with, voter information or pamphlets or whatever. So I think the great thing, Jason Simmons is the chair of the North Carolina GOP. He was the executive director under the now RNC co-chairs Michael Whatley. I have incredible faith in him that he's, completely on top of everything that needs to happen. I personally think that if there are people who would be able to help with more of the maintenance to get the roads cleared and technology and the lines back up, that might be the greatest way that we could ensure election security. They did say that none of the machines were affected. So there are some positive pieces out of this. We are monitoring it extremely closely.
Doug, in 30 seconds, as a candidate, how difficult will this be now in these affected areas?
It's going to be very difficult. Ashley and her team are doing a great job, and I think a lot of other teams as well, to get this happening. But if you're a candidate, you got to be just sort of wringing your hands in this, because it is going to be difficult. They're worried about turning the power on. They're worried about eating. They're worried about those things. So, yes, it's going to be my concern is not that they're going to have the physical capability to do it. My concern is that because of life events, are they actually going to show up? We can't afford a downturn of 5 or 10% of not turnout. So that's why what Ashley's saying is so important, is getting them the ability to make sure they get there earlier, get that vote done.
That's right. All right, it's Thursday. We always end with our winners and losers of the week. Bradley, I'm going to start with you. Kind of quickly, give me who you think has done well this week and who hasn't.
Loser, Kamala Harris's bookers. Winners, the
pioneers. Strong.
The pioneers of Trump's alternative media strategy, Alex Bruzewitz, that team, phenomenal job reaching the people that Trump needs to win.
Oh, I like this. Oh, Bradley brought his A game today. Ashley Hayek, you got to match this. Give me a winner and a loser.
So I'm going to actually say AFW as the winner, and I'll not be humbled today. We just crossed over 3.4 million voters that we have reached on the ground with door knocking campaign.
AFW, America First Works, just to make sure
America First Works. And we have deployed over 6.8 million text messages to targeted voters to help get out the vote. So I'm going to say America First Works is the winner this week. And the loser is going to be Tim Walz for just continually to step in it, wanting to take out our Constitution and having to be handheld and wiped by Kamala Harris.
Yeah, he announced suddenly they want to get rid of the Electoral College this week, by the way. Gosh, maybe because you're losing. By the way, you just made me feel so much better with those statistics. I love what you guys are doing.
I'm in Michigan right now, and it is okay.
Phenomenal. That even better. Okay, Doug Collins, real quick, winner and a loser. I got like 10 seconds.
Yeah, my winner, the folks of Butler, Pennsylvania. That's the winner. The losers, a tie between the New York Jets and CBS.
Okay, I like that. All right, my loser for the week is Nike for the aforementioned commercial that we played, because they're not going to just do it. They'll do nothing. My winner of the week is Ron DeSantis, because as Ashley pointed out, I think the ability to handle these things and do them well, and he stood up and showed people the ridiculousness of the politicalization that Kamala Harris is trying to bring to the storm. Good for him, and thanks for him getting all the help to the people of Florida. Thank you guys all for watching. Great show last night. Tomorrow, we're breaking down the latest polls with one of America's top pollsters. Sunday night, set that notification now. Sunday Night Live, 7 o'clock. We're going live state by state with the battleground states and key folks in each of those states to tell us what they're doing to make those phone calls, the early vote, the registration. Anyway, thanks for being with us. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.